Hey guys, it's Christian from Lost in Discovery and welcome back to my One Piece journey. So I have just completed Sabaody Archipelago, and it was an absolute banger. I can't wait to talk about this arc today. This arc covered chapters 490 to 513, so it's on the more medium to small size of arcs so far in One Piece, but man, was it freaking packed. For me, this arc was really all over the place, but all over the place in terms of how many facets of storytelling Oda could kind of tap into and do so freaking well. It flowed for me so much better than Thriller Bark and gave me practically everything I love about One Piece in a very short, compact, and effective period of time. It gave me the comedy, it gave me the action, it gave me the world building, it gave me the history, it gave me the lore, and it gave me those tearful, emotional moments that just hit harder because this story is filled with such pure joy and love. When these emotional moments hit, they just kind of destroy you and leaving you questioning your existence for just a little bit of your day and a little bit of the next day and the next day, and before you know it, you're thinking about it and you're making YouTube videos about it. Maybe we're just getting into a bit of like introspection here, but look, One Piece, I'm really appreciating it in the sense of I feel like I'm locked in to the storytelling style that Oda is going for. You know, when you're kind of jumping between series a lot and it can be jarring to adjust to all these different tones and all these different senses of humor and all these different styles of pacing and artworks in the case of manga. There's nothing like getting really tapped into a series and feeling just so at home and like you're in that kind of the flow state with the author. I feel like I'm right there in One Piece, and this arc really delivered for me. Okay, so let's start with those lovely little in-betweeny parts we get at the end and at the beginning of each arc. And with this one, we kind of see Luffy's reaction to hearing about Ace, and I was so expecting the story to be like, let's beeline to Ace, he's in trouble. But Luffy's like, no, he's chilling. If he's really in trouble, he would have told me about it. Don't worry, we'll get to him eventually. Luffy, you've just got to go with, there's no use fighting him. He's got a vision and we're going with it. I really love that we got a panel kind of welcoming Brook into the crew. Everyone's cheersing, we're feeling good, we're excited to get to the red line. We're at the halfway point of the entire journey of the Grand Line, which is bloody incredible to think about, and it's so cool just seeing how far we've come since the guys and girls started on the Grand Line. It just feels like yesterday we were just talking about those chapters and going on to this grand adventure. It's unbelievable to think how far we've come and how many new friends we've made along the way. And just when you think One Piece can't get any weirder, we meet a few new characters, one of which is a mermaid, which I recognize from the cover stories, Camie, and a starfish, who is also, very important to note, a fashion designer. Because if you're going to have a starfish in your story, you may as well make it a fashion designer. I couldn't think of any other profession for a starfish if you ask me. No, but honestly, Camie and Pappagu, as he's mentioned in the manga, are just two of the most lovable, colourful little characters we've had so far in the series. Getting this connection to Hachi, I know I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but to get this connection with Hachi from freaking Arlong Park, I knew like we had the cover stories with Hachi and Camie and all of that, but sometimes you don't know if the cover stories are going to come back into the main series. Maybe I'm missing someone from the past, but to finally get like a character from so long ago really reintroduced, elaborated upon, and made a key player in this story was so enjoyable to read. Like I've said in my recent reviews, I love how this is really coming together into a more cohesive narrative rather than being just sort of island hopping contained adventures. Oda's really showing you like, no, this is a massive story, everything's important, don't close your eyes for 1 minute, because the smallest little things can come back and have huge repercussions, and that's the stuff I love in these kinds of stories. From here we have the main conflict of trying to save Hachi, this intense sort of distrust between Nami and this whole goal of the pirates, and meeting Duval. Duval, who is like the big bad of the first part of this arc, and he, you know, he's got the mask on, he's being hyped up like, I know these Strawhats, they ruined my life and I need to get back at them, and my mind was just racing. And because we've got a mermaid, we've got Hachi, I was in the kind of world of the fishmen, and I was so convinced. I even wrote in my notes, I was like, is this Arlong? Is this freaking Arlong coming back? And I was getting so freaking excited to seeing like a character, a big bad like Arlong again. But alas, and look, I suppose that didn't really make sense now that I think back on it, especially with the mask and Arlong's like swordfish nose. And I actually don't, I'm gonna sound really bad here, but I don't actually exactly remember what happened to Arlong at the end of that arc, besides like Luffy absolutely demolishing him. Regardless, it turns out Duval is just a guy who happens to look exactly like Sanji's botched wanted poster, and there was mixed emotions here. Part of me was like, oh come on, I really wanted it to be, you know, some big bad or some really impactful character from the past, but just the fact that it's a guy who looks exactly like Sanji's wanted poster is kind of comedy gold. And just in a arc that has so much heavy messaging and heavy themes explored later on, this is a very welcome addition, and it was honestly a good laugh to start off this arc. Very cool fights here. Brook like casually running on water, just demolishing people. He's really invested in the Straw Hats. He wants to impress them on the first fight, doesn't want to mess up. Lots of funny comedy moments, Luffy getting knocked in the water and Chopper and Brook jumping in after him, even though they're the devil fruit users. But we got into these very interesting subtle moments, and I'm telling you right now, Oda is really drip feeding me and teasing me with this whole Haki business, right? Because when Duval comes out on his giant bull or whatever it is, and Luffy just looks at it and it passes out. Is Luffy using what the Haki that Shanks used? Because I think it was in post Enies Lobby when we saw Shanks go onto the boat and he just knocked out everyone, and we see it later again in this arc with Rayleigh. How is Luffy able to do this? Is it the will of D? Very, very curious to how he's achieving this and where this is going in the story. And to wrap up this kind of initial battle, Sanji gets so triggered and so mad that he uses his insane kicking ability to kick Duval into actually being handsome, and for some reason he just reminded me of like the prince from Shrek for whatever reason. It's probably a weird comparison, but he kind of did, just like the attitude he adopted. And it was pretty funny. Can Sanji please kick my face and fix this situation? That would be lovely. From here, we finally arrive at the groves of Sabaody, I don't know how to say it, but we arrive at the mangroves there, and again Oda continues to impress with his island designs, even though it's technically not an island, but you know what I mean. There's just so much freaking creativity here. I like how the groves are numbered, even though Zoro still got lost when he's like, yeah, we got to meet at Grove 41, that's fine. Or Grove 1, but it was actually 41 and the bubble covered it. Classic Zoro humor, love it. So much of One Piece, it just takes me back to being a kid, and I will forever cherish that feeling because it's extremely rare to feel, especially these days. Just like life can feel just so terrible sometimes and the world can be so overwhelming. Send me to a place where bubbles just sprout out of the ground and you can go in them and ride them. Like, hell yeah, that sounds like the best place to be right now, minus the human trafficking and slavery. We'll get onto that in a minute, but the bubble design of everything was so fun, and the fact that there's an entire amusement park about it. Can you blame Brook and Luffy and Chopper for wanting to go? Not really. Beyond the exterior of this extremely enticing and beautiful and awe-inspiring world are some of the most terrible acts that you have seen in this entire series that you can imagine in the entire world. Human trafficking, racism, persecution, abuse, just like Oda threw it all in there at you, and I think it was so effective because it just hits you out of nowhere and you don't expect it to see it in such a location like you are here, where it's just so full of joy and wonder. And the introduction to the celestial dragons and just their, oh my god, the terrible acts. We see one with a human slave and they're wearing these collars and we see him run away and it just completely blows up, and it doesn't kill the person, but because it's One Piece, nobody can die. But like, Oda leaves it sort of up to interpretation. Like I said, with being in the kind of flow state with One Piece, you kind of understand the rules, right? He's not going to easily outright kill people, but the messaging was very, very clear here. Like, these people are dying, these people are being killed for no reason, these celestial dragons are absolutely scum of the earth. And the way this was done was completely shocking. The art was brutal. You had those harsh, shadowy, black images, and my goodness, it kind of just like shook me as I was reading it, because I didn't expect this turn of events to happen. And it really sets up the entire central conflict here, because very, very soon after Camie gets abducted, it was so sad seeing everyone's reaction. They just wanted to give her a nice time and a nice experience. She's wanted to go so bad, and just seeing how they've had to pose as humans as well as Hachi, and just the stress that Hachi was under this whole time, looking over his shoulder, being so on edge, but wanting to help the Straw Hats because of Camie, and making amends with Nami after all the terrible things that happened at Arlong Park. Like, you just really, really felt for these characters. And I just love that Oda fully went for it. He did not hold back in the slightest. We see these people begging for their lives. I've got a family I need to live on. These celestial dragons just shoot them on the ground. And Luffy is just absolutely, and the whole crew really, everybody is absolutely mortified, just as you are as a reader. I just feel like, so, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say grateful, but I'm just very glad that Oda's tackling these tough subjects in a story like One Piece. I feel like the more I get into One Piece, the further I go into it, I feel like it's just really talking about so many different aspects of humanity and history, and he doesn't, and whilst it's funny, it's goofy, it's silly, and it's awe-inspiring, and it's a big adventure, he does not shy away from the darkness of the world, and how no matter where you are, no matter what sort of state you're in or what portion in history you're at, there's always these terrible, awful things happening. I'm just so glad he's chosen to include that here. It's basically what I'm trying to say. I'm glad he went there, and he did it quite well, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the sort of lore dump about the celestial dragons, how they're the descendants of the 20 kings that formed the world government 800 years ago, and you just, like, everything about them, you just freaking hate them from the moment you see them on their page with their bubbles around their heads so they don't breathe the same air as other people. Just the most terrible people so far in the entire story. Another thing Oda takes time to do in this section of the arc is introduce us to all the other pirates, these kind of new era of rookies who are arriving at Sabaody before going to the new world. And it was kind of a sobering moment for me, realizing, like, yeah, of course there's going to be other pirates with high bounties with cool devil fruit powers, and they're going to be chasing after exactly what Luffy is. I don't know why this didn't occur to me. It might have in the back of my mind, but it took me to actually see it in the manga, like the slow person I am, to really kind of get it. And it was really it was a lot at first, because he just throws so many characters at you with the nameplates and the descriptions, and it just kind of washes over you. And I was like, okay, instead of just really focusing on this now, I know they'll get elaborated upon later, and you kind of see the abilities they have once everything goes down at the auction house at the end. But I like that we're getting a more cohesive, well-rounded world, showing that, you know, we're not the only people on this journey. There are so many others that are going for glory, and a whole new era of pirates beyond the Straw Hats. One scene, I wrote it down here, I know I just went on and on about the celestial dragons, but that scene where we get introduced, I forgot exactly his name, but the one that, you know, the one, you know him. He rocks up riding his human slave. He sees a pretty woman, says, you know, that's my wife now. The husband runs over, no, we're engaged, shoots him, and I'm just like, this is insane. We've seen nothing like this in One Piece. And when Zoro rocked up, he's like, dude, what do you want? And he like dodges the bullet, and he's about to hit him before that other pirate lady tackles him. You just gotta love Zoro. Like, he's he's gone up so high in my estimation, especially since Thriller Bark. And again here, he's just the ride or die we've all wanted for our entire lives, I swear. Things really ramp up from here, leading into Camie being abducted and getting put up for auction at the slaver's house. We get introduced to Roger's first mate, Rayleigh, and one of the most badass introductions ever, where he uses Haki to like knock out the guards who have hit and abused Camie, and he's just sitting there like chilling like an old guy. There's nothing like a powerful old, you know, wizard or master or witch or whatever in fantasy. There's nothing like they're just like chilling and they're knocking people out. It's so satisfying to read every time. It's a trope that I freaking adore. And it's cool that we're seeing the Navy side of things and seeing that Garp is hearing about all of this. And Garp is just so freaking related to Luffy. He's so nonchalant about everything, and he just laughs. He's like, that guy, you know, keep an eye on him. But, you know, we got this whole other war about to start. It's really, really good how all these threads are slowly being tied together. And we're seeing sort of the old guard and all the connections between all the old blokes from the good old days and how they're interpreting these new events with the Straw Hat Gang. Okay, and let's just start talking about the most satisfying punch I have perhaps ever witnessed in my entire existence. And yes, I did watch it in the anime. Like, I watched that anime scene like close to 50 times just on repeat, how it goes into black and white and just the connection really. Okay, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. The whole way this went down was so freaking stressful and heartbreaking, and Nami thinks of a way to play by the rules, and they were going to put up 200 million I think for Camie, but this piece of trash, Celestial Dragon, puts up 500 million berries, and it just shows that you can't like follow the rules of these terrible people. You just have to freaking break the system entirely, and that's what Luffy understands. My goodness, the scene between him and Hachi after Hachi gets shot, which is so shocking, by the way, so abrupt and just so effectively done by Oda, and this emotional speech by Hachi and get an insight to his mindset, how he is so hateful of himself, filled with so much regret, and he just wanted to make up for the terrible things he did with Arlong and Nami and her village. Like, he just wanted to make it up. He wanted to start again, and you know, people deserve that chance to start again. And that just shock of when he went to hold back Luffy and all his arms came out and everyone was just appalled to see a fishman, and it was just a poignant moment, executed so well, and you felt so bad for the guy, and you just felt like this situation is absolutely terrible. And Luffy makes that face. He just makes that face, and the hype starts building. You're like, he's gonna smack him, isn't he? He's just gonna hit him. And the slow walk up. You know what? Not many people could walk in flip-flops and look that badass. You know, not many people, but Luffy, my boy, pulls it off effortlessly. The way he dodges the bullets, and the way he freaking punches the Celestial Dragon with no abilities, just a good old classic connection. It just there's not much to say besides like, damn, that was good, and it was so freaking satisfying, and I watched it a million times just to relive that moment. No one had a punch coming to them so much as that Celestial Dragon, and it was set up so quickly but so effectively by Oda. God, I'll never get over it. Best punch so far in the series, easily. Bellamy punch. Get out of here, man. And all the Straw Hats start arriving. Usopp yeets into the building through the roof, lands on the Celestial Dragon's dad. Absolutely beautiful. And in walk Rayleigh and a freaking giant. And Rayleigh's like, you know what? I'm just gonna knock out everyone with my brain. And his Haki whatever power thing just like goes through the entire crowd, and all of the terrible people are knocked out, and all of the pirates are still standing. And he's like, oh, you guys are strong to withstand that. So obviously they have some sort of something that allows them to withstand Haki. I think it was mentioned once in the Shanks section when he used it, that they had some sort of something that allows them to withstand Haki. I'm not sure of the word, but it seems like all of these people who are still standing, there's something about them that makes them a bit stronger. And in this room are some new really high bounty pirates, namely Trafalgar Law, who is like perhaps the coolest new kid on the block, and is it Eustace Kid, who is, you know, straight out of your early 2000s pop punk emo band era, and I love to see it. This fight outside the auction house with Luffy, Kid, and Law is one of my favorite scenes in One Piece so far. These three kids who are freaking hungry for the crown, you know, who are going for the One Piece, who want to be, I don't know if they all want to be King of the Pirates, but they want to be renowned pirates. And they're all eager to prove themselves, and they just start flaunting these devil fruit powers in the most satisfying and badass way. And what made it even better, I have to clarify this, but Law's voice actor sounds exactly like Levi from Attack on Titan, and once I hear that voice, you know, it just kind of does things. You kind of like, this guy's a badass. And when Law uses his devil fruit like room power and shambles, and he like switches the guy's head and switches everyone's body parts and mashes them together, I was like, holy crap, do not mess with this guy. And he's got like a panda sidekick. I don't know, it just kind of washed over me at this point. And Kid with his like Mistborn-esque metal powers, where he could pull all of these objects together and create like a monster weapon. These guys are terrifying when fighting together. Can you imagine going up against these three and Luffy with like the fist the size of like the Empire State Building flying at you? Like, how the hell are you meant to do anything against these people? It was very, very cool, this scene. I loved it. Like, true to form, as Oda has done so far, we keep getting glimpses of the greater world and the greater chess game that's happening in the background, and we find out that Doflamingo actually owned this entire slavers auction, and we know that, we find out, even though it's illegal, the world government totally knows about it. Like, he's like, oh, some guy in the Navy or high up in the government was like, can you check on the slavers, I mean the human resources building? And it's just like terrible, terrible people that deserve to be totally destroyed by Kid, Law, and Luffy. Moving on from this portion, I am going to lovingly call this the Infodump bar chat with Rayleigh, and I freaking loved the amount of information we were given with such little effort. Rayleigh's just like, what do you want to know about the backstory, guys? I'm going to give it to you over the next few chapters. We learned that Hachi saved Rayleigh when he was a kid. I hope we get more elaboration on that. We learned so much about Goldie Roger and how he turned himself in and he was terminally ill. We learned about his relationship with Crocus and how Crocus joined the crew and he was looking for Brooks' crew, and Brooks like, I think I heard of a rookie named Roger. I don't know, he doesn't care. So many cool moments in this bar scene, so much lore, so much information about like the most mysterious person, Roger. And it was fantastic to learn about it. I was sitting back with the Strawhats being like, oh my god, I can't believe this. This is so awesome. I loved hearing about this relationship between Rayleigh and Roger. It really, really, really reminded me of Zoro and Luffy. Just the relationship between the captain and their first mate, and him saying, I won't die, partner. And him kind of announcing that the One Piece is out there and setting off this whole new generation of pirates. It was very inspiring to read and very, very cool just to see a veteran of this world kind of kick back and, you know, tell the tales of the day, you know. I really laughed when they all found out about Buggy and Shanks being on Goldie Roger's crew as rookies. So funny. Kind of felt like me in my video when I made that connection too. It's just kind of mind-blowing. There was an interesting thing where we see this scene of Shanks telling Rayleigh that he's like, oh, I know this kid, Luffy, like, he was saying the exact same thing as Captain Roger. I don't know if I'm reading into that too much, but like, what does he mean about like the exact same thing? Is there some sort of deeper connection there? I love Luffy's reaction when he's hearing about Shanks. He loves him so much and he misses him so much. When Rayleigh was like, oh, I shouldn't keep saying things that Shanks hasn't told you. And I was like, you bastard, you know so much and you could have just given me more, but fair enough, you old bloke. You gave us a lot, I'll take it. And a moment of appreciation for our girl, Nico Robin, for just stepping up and going right up to him and being like, hey, what the heck is this Will of D thing about? Can we just give her a standing ovation for this moment? Like, it's what we're all wanting to know at this point in the story, and she just gets up and asks it. Love that. And we don't get a really clear answer whatsoever. Okay, fair enough. But it was interesting to hear Ray sort of say he does know about this missing years of history, but it's kind of up for interpretation, and he wants Robin to go on her own journey and figure it out. And I found it to be a huge moment for her, that she's actually willing to walk away from it and say, look, I'll go on my own journey, I'll figure it out. When he even offered to really tell her. I really admire Robin's strength for that, and that she has enough faith in herself that she's going to figure this out and get her own interpretation. And I like it for us as well, because like Luffy did when, you know, Usopp tried to get spoilers for the last chapters, and Luffy absolutely lost his mind. He's like, no, I'm gonna quit being a pirate if I know where the One Piece is or if it's real. Oh, he lost it. I love that scene so much because it just sums up Luffy, and it sums up, you know, journey before destination. Stormlight fans, you know what I'm talking about. It's all about the journey. Don't worry about if the One Piece is there, what it is. It's about being the most free person, as Luffy says, like the king of the pirates will be the most free person in the world. And what a beautiful line from him. I love that scene so much. This whole bar scene, freaking chef's kiss. Beautiful. Oh, I didn't really get to mention this other woman who was really good friends with Ray. I've forgotten her name, but she was very cool too. And she seems to really know what the hell's going on. Everyone talking about, you know, meeting a legend. I loved that we got a little Franky scene here where he's thinking about Tom and how these are the people he sacrificed himself for in the Oro Jackson. I'm so glad I got to meet him. It's just, Oda never forgets a chance to touch on these nuances of all the different characters and keeping so many backstories and motivations and all this in line in a manga where there's limited space, limited room for dialogue. You know, he really always adds those sprinkles of genius and little character building right when they're needed, and he never misses in that way. From here, things get incredibly messy and we move into this final battle. Ends in an absolute gut punch of a scene, and we get introduced to Kizaru, another freaking antagonist who doesn't need to put his arms in his jacket, which is magically pinned to his shoulders because he's that badass. And what a weird character, honestly. He's just so quirky and so airy-fairy, but absolutely terrifying at the same time. He is so nonchalant. He seems to kind of not really know what's going on, but also know exactly what's going on. And he obliterates people because he ate the glint fruit, and he's like made of light, and he can kick people at the speed of light. Just seeing his powers combined with this kind of nonchalant attitude created a very, very formidable and very sort of unsettling, I think is the word, unsettling antagonist. And we kind of see all these other rookie pirates going up against Kizaru and showing off all of their interesting abilities and all their devil fruits. So many weird and interesting, I think, abilities. I think the one that stood out the most was Captain, was it Beige or Beg or Beggy or something? And his whole crew lives in his body as miniatures, and they can leave his body and then become full size, and they're like shooting out cannons that start out small and then get large. I just thought that was one of the most creative devil fruit powers I've seen so far in the series. Very, very cool. That woman pirate who can change the age of people between like elderly to young children. So much fun. The guy who had like piano teeth and he could play music and attack you. Maybe I need to go back and observe these guys a little bit more. I was just kind of more, when I was reading this, I was more into the overarching story of the Strawhats and what the repercussions will be for them specifically, rather than like all of these new pirates. It was a bit overwhelming, but it was just pure chaos reading this. Like the guy who turned into a dinosaur just for like a few panels, why not? This battle was all over the place, and seeing all of these, what do they call them, pacifistas, or these robots that are modeled after Kuma rock up everywhere, made by Vegapunk. Like Vegapunk seems to be just absolutely popping off in the science laboratory, making all of these bombastic and interesting abilities and formidable foes. And Kizaru just seems, how do you kill this guy? Because he gets like sliced in half and he just reforms himself with light while just kind of shrugging off everything and kicking people at the speed of light. I've been talking for like close to an hour, so I know, I'm sorry that I'm rambling now. It's starting to not make any sense whatsoever. Very cool to meet Sentomaru, who says he's Vegapunk's bodyguard, and this relationship between him and Kizaru. and all of these kind of wink wink nudge nudge conversations between Kuma and Kizaru. And how about the block out of nowhere from Rayleigh just flying in and putting his foot up to block the attack from Kizaru? Like, this scene was incredible, and it's just so good to see people at the top of the power levels, at least as far as I know, in One Piece, just absolutely go at it. And what this whole fight really did was show us that, damn, the Straw Hats, maybe they're not ready for the new world. Maybe they need a reality check, and that's exactly what this was. Like, they had no chance against what they were, like, between the bots of Kuma himself, Kizaru, all of these other rookies. Like, it was complete madness here. The desperation in this fight, like the sadness, the emotion was just palpable. And from the moment that Zoro is disappeared and Luffy's just like, we have to run, we have to get out of here, and he's begging people to leave. Sanji, you need to run. Chopper goes into his monster form. Like, they're just going all in at this moment. It was just the hardest person to watch here was Luffy. How much it broke him from a guy who was ready to fight, going into gear second, ready to go, to being shocked at the disappearance of Zoro and just starting to beg as each Straw Hat is disappeared, from begging to being an incoherent mess who can't even get a sentence out. He can't process what's going on. He's just questioning everything. There are a few of the disappearances, like all of the disappearances hit me, but notable ones. Brooke making a dead guy joke mid-sentence whilst being disappeared. Nami's one, when she's saying, help me, Luffy, and it took me right back to Along Park, and where he could help her then, he can't help her anymore, and it just felt so helpless. And when it was just Robin left, Robin's the one that hit the most. That shot, that perfect eye contact like you are Luffy in that panel. And she's finally found her family, she's finally found her people, and for Luffy, he's the Straw Hats everything. Just to see that moment between them as it's all slipped away absolutely broke my heart. But what hit the most was just, especially in the anime too. Don't get me wrong, in the manga it was incredible, but like the movement and the animation and the voice acting in the anime, wow. When Luffy's just on the ground, he's crying, he's hitting his head against the floor, he's pulling his hair like he can't believe what's happened. And we've never seen him so beat down, so lost, so overwhelmed, and just so beat. Like, they just got beat. They were not ready. And it was a massive reality check for them. You know, I wrote it on my Twitter. I was just like, I love in stories when characters get beat down. Everything's taken away from them. They're at the lowest of the lows. You have to see how they're going to get out of this and how they're going to pull themselves up from like the depths within them through only their own willpower and only sheer determination. Can they get through this and can they persevere? I love to see that in stories because it's so inspiring. I really take it on. You know, you try and apply it to your own life and try and gain strength from it. Having said all that, like, the scene was heartbreaking in the sense of watching all the Straw Hats get separated and them not knowing what's going to happen, and Luffy losing his family. It was so emotional in that sense, but the story analytical, like, outside of the world of One Piece version of myself was like, oh, I think Kuma's trying to help them. Like, it kind of came across like if Kuma didn't teleport them, they were actually all gonna die. So I kind of feel like Kuma's doing them a favor. No idea why he's doing them a favor. The only reason I could gather that beyond the actions was he did mention Dragon at the end of Thriller Bark as if he knew Dragon and he made a connection to Luffy through that. So maybe there's some sort of connection between Dragon and Kuma, an old friendship or something, or an old relationship of some kind where he's kind of got a soft spot for Luffy. What's most interesting to me is the question of when the hell are these Straw Hats actually going to get back together? Part of me wants them to get back together, but actually a big part of me wants them to be separate for quite some time, because I feel like it would be incredibly interesting from a narrative standpoint to explore the Straw Hats individually, without their friends, without their backbone, their family. I think it would be incredibly intriguing to see. I can't imagine any of them on their own. Like, I'm actually like trying to think about it. Maybe Brook, because that's kind of his thing, being on his own. Oh, I feel bad saying that, but yeah, I just really hope we kind of get like, oh, here's the Luffy section. What's he doing? Let's get the Nami section. What's Robin going? Where they all end up? It's so many questions at the end of this arc, and I just can't wait to see how everyone perseveres. And my mind's already going ahead. I can't wait for all the freaking reunions. I love a good reunion, and I feel like the Straw Hats, assuming they get back together, like they are, but like I don't know when. But when they get back together, I'm keen for like some hugs and a few drinks. So yes, those are my incredibly scatterbrained, all over the place, ranting sort of thoughts on Sabaody Archipelago. And look, this arc was fantastic. As I said in the intro, it tackled so many heavy topics, executed them so well, whilst keeping the humour and the wonder and the sense of adventure that One Piece is just so consistent with. Oda, I can tell he's ramping up to some serious, all-out world event sort of stuff happening in One Piece. Just this build-up between Whitebeard and Blackbeard and Ace and whatever's going on with Shanks. Like, I just feel like everything's about to go insane in this saga, and I don't know if I'm ready for it, but I'm intrigued about it. Don't know if I'm emotionally prepared especially after the ending of this arc. Thank you so much for watching and hearing my thoughts and being so supportive and lovely and informative, especially in the comments. I really appreciate when you guys point things out that I missed. Again, we'll do a big live stream after this entire saga, and hopefully we can talk about all the extra stuff, like the cover stories with the CP9 agents doing like charity work and trying to raise money. Yeah, there's just so much to talk about with One Piece. It's just been an absolute joy reading it, and I love sharing this experience with you. So thank you, and I will see you very soon. Hope you're well. Bye.